guys.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with so many people in Lisboa. I'm very excited to be speaking with Adam today. We've got about 18 minutes, so I'm just going to quickly give you an introduction as to the theme we'll be discussing today, and then we'll dive straight in. So I think a lot of us have been hearing about this sense of myopia that the tech culture is reported to have. So in terms of the kinds of ways in which we build apps and platforms with intent that serve the businesses and not the users, and that a lot of the developed tools are made by developers for developers. So today we're going to look a little bit about UX, whether it's the same thing as UI, and some of the issues that are in that subject that we can unpack. So Adam, tell us first of all a little bit about your role at Time Digital and what it encompasses.
Sure. So, I'm the design and UX director for Time.com, and I also work on Fortune.com and Money.com. So right now we're reimagining all three architectures, and I'm working on the redesign of all three at the same time.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about things like UX and UI and product design, they often get mentioned within the same breath. How would you define the differences between these different approaches?
Sure. So, I think as the title of our talk suggests, there's a lot of confusion around this subject. But quite simply, user experience design is essentially what it says. It's the user experience. What does the user actually do when they use your product? What is their intention? What is their behavior? And it's really like, what do you look at first? Where do you go first? Where do you go next? It's really quite simple. And UI is the things you see on screen, right? These could be informational elements, actionable elements, purely aesthetic things to make your design look pretty. And then of course, product design, which is the combination of these two things beautifully coming together. And I think if you do a good job on your UX and your UI, you're going to have an amazing product.
And I think we all know that when something is really beautifully designed, it should be a joy to use, and it makes the overall experience much more pleasurable.
Absolutely.
And so as a UX designer, where do you think is the sweet spot when designing architecture that is standardized versus meeting the needs of very individual people who are interacting with your platform?
Right. So, I think that one of the things we're really focused on at Time is our redesign itself, right? We're in the process of redesigning each one of these, and we're essentially building three platforms, but they're identical in their, in exactly what they do. They have a homepage, they have section fronts, they have articles, and each one of these things has, like for example, in an article, there's images, there's headlines, there's body copy. So structurally, they're the same thing, but when you sort of break it down, why not sort of build the same architecture for each and throw a different skin on it, right? So we like to say, the same bones, different skin. The skin are things like logos, colors, fonts, pictures. These sort of give the identity of each of these sites. And what the efficiencies are in doing this are that we get to build the same products for each one of these properties. If we need an image gallery, well, it's going to work across all three. Or a video carousel, it's going to work across all three. We also get to test against user bases that are way bigger. So there's economies of scale here, and I think it's going to lead to us having better product development and a more successful future.
So when you're designing these sorts of standardized platforms, the bones that then get put into these different structures, how do you convince people that that's the right approach? Because it sounds to me like there must be a lot of psychology involved in getting people motivated within the teams to make those design decisions, and in taking some of the agency away from the designers to do exactly what they want, because you've got a few more boundaries there.
Right.
How do you work with teams to convince them that this is the right approach to UX?
Yeah, I mean, in our team at Time, and one of my biggest initiatives has been design sprints. And we found them incredibly beneficial to our team. They really foster a sense of team collaboration, that is really unparalleled. And for those who aren't familiar with how a design sprint essentially works, I break it down to about 7 steps. The first being a discovery phase. We're going to get all the team members in one place. This could be design, development, product, in our case, our editorial staff, or maybe our sales staff. And we're going to all talk about the problem we're trying to solve. We'll identify a few That's what our sprint's going to be focused on. And then in step 2, we're actually going to bring a smaller group of this diverse group together. We're going to start sketching solutions, and this is actually, literally drawing on paper with Sharpies, boxes on a page, and everyone's going to have an opportunity to present their idea. And then at the end, we're going to vote on those ideas, and the best ideas are going to rise to the top. And essentially, we're going to put together all these things and smash them together and put together a wireframe that we're all very happy with. Then it goes into the design phase. Then it goes into the prototyping phase, and then we're actually going to test it with real users. So after we get that feedback, we may iterate on that, we may throw it back into a design sprint, or we're going to move that into development and actually build a product and get some real quantitative data to put against it. So it's really an opportunity. It's a political tool, right, in that nobody feels excluded. Everybody has a voice in this process, and at the end, you actually have a better product because you're involving your users very early on, as opposed to later in the process where you may have major headaches down the road.
By show of hands, how many of you take that sort of iterative approach to your UX design? You went straight up. Okay, many
Awesome.
of us. Well done.
That's
okay, great.
Well done.
So when we're talking about collaborating with users, which evidently you do, I wonder at which point it's the responsibility of the company creating such platforms where we spend a lot of our time to consider how the UX is influencing the way that we spend our time on these platforms and whether it serves and empowers the user. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think companies, including my own, have many different agendas, right? We all need to make money, so there's the business solutions, and then there's the user experience, and there's definitely a balance that you have to have between the two. I do think that a lot of times CEOs feel beholden to their stockholders or their investors, and this can create sort of a problem because investors and stockholders want their money now, right? They want to make the quick buck. But what I would do is I want to encourage CEOs to maybe, and investors and stockholders to think about the long term, right? If we focus on getting a quick buck today and rushing a product out the door and just making your designs look pretty and not think about the product, then you're falling to a common pitfall of developing a really poor product that you're going to have lots of headaches down the road. And instead of thinking about the future of what your product could possibly be. And I think if you build a better product today and focus on developing it and spend a little more time on design early on, then you're going to have a better product in the future.
So taking a bit more of a research-based approach, thinking carefully at the beginning before you start.
Very much so, yes.
Okay, another quick show of hands. How many of you who work in UX would love the opportunity to wait the research and put your customers first before you get to the design stage, but you're not able to? So how many of you want to? How many of you are in companies where actually you are able to? Actually, that's encouraging. Okay, great. So can I ask, what are some of the tips that you think for people who are struggling with this that you've applied within time and across the different domains that can help convince the people higher up the chain to say, actually, this is really necessary?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have to admit that even at time, I had difficulties at first convincing people that design sprints were the right approach. Time is a very old company, and recently we've been making lots of changes and ways to sort of go forward. Excuse me. But what I did was I sort of started slowly, and I convinced people that, like, look, this is the right approach. If we start thinking about our users too far down the pipe, we're going to make many, many mistakes down the road. So if we employ design sprints into our process, then we're clearly going to be able to win in the future. And these are the things that Google and Facebook and many other competitors are doing. And so if we're not doing them, then what are we doing, really?
So do you think within that there's a role outside of the companies who are running these design sprints and bringing their users in, that there's a role for people to evangelize to users? I mean, we all are also users as well as the designers of our future web technologies. Is there a problem there and a responsibility to communicate to users what user experience is and that they actually have a role in shaping the kind of products that they get?
Yeah, I mean, I think that users, well actually, can you repeat the question or rephrase
Sure.
it?
So like for all of us here, we'll talk about UX, and we all broadly will have similar definitions as to what that is. But for people who are users who've got no idea, they just want to read their article on Time magazine
Right.
or use their app or set their alarm or whatever, they don't often know that there are choices that have been designed specifically for them to take.
Yes.
So is it our responsibility as people within the UX community
Yes.
to communicate with users and go, this is actually how you're being shaped and your decisions are being changed?
Totally.
What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as a UX designer, we often face this challenge, we face it every day. We definitely have a responsibility to sort of lead our users to the right, intended behavior. That's what good UX is all about. Of course, there is the part where we are sort of leading them towards maybe seeing another advertisement, for example, in Time.com's case. But we're sort of pivoting away from that. So we started to do native advertising over the past 2 years, and it's been extremely successful for us. We're trying to not blend or blur the lines between an advertisement and editorial. All our native content is true editorial content, partnered with a brand to just say like, hey, like this is awesome stuff that we want to present to you. And we've seen tremendous success, and I think it's on the road of hopefully removing those, pesky banner ads that, most people really just don't enjoy.
Which is a win-win, right? Because none of us want to see banner ads. We all have banner blindness to an extent or another.
Yep.
And I think what's interesting about the approach that you're taking at Time is that obviously you need to be able to fund the platform to be able to deliver value, and that with native ads, if the quality is high enough, you're entering a reciprocal relationship with your consumers where they're actually getting something of value back.
Totally.
Okay, so how do you think UX as a field is going to change? What are the things that you're excited about for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy that we're running design sprints in our company now. I think you're going to see a complete transformation across the board of companies starting to think about design and UX in a much different way. I think there are probably a large portion of companies that still just don't understand how to do it. I mean, including Time, just over the past year, we've really changed everything about our approach. It's no longer just make it look pretty. Designers are thinkers. They are people who are solving problems, major problems for business. And I think that if businesses can see this transformation, just like Apple and Google and Facebook all have, then I think they're going to win in the long term.
So do you think there's something there about people in different areas within a company actually communicating with one another instead of being siloed into UX over here, developers over here, content people over here, etc.?
It was a little hard to hear.
I know,
Is it
the
possible
echoes.
to get a little more in the monitors, because there's an echo going on? That's
Okay, we're going to try that again.
Yeah.
Thanks for bearing with us. So the question really is, when we're thinking about better UX for users, do you think it's good that different types of teams, like UX designers, developers, content teams, start collaborating so that
Yes.
there's a much greater sense of communication across all of these areas?
Yes, yeah, I mean, that's what design sprints are all about, right? We're bringing together all these teams so that everybody has a voice, and it's so important for our teams to collaborate together. I mean, if you don't bring your development team early in on the process, how are you going to know if maybe you design something that they just can't make? Or if you don't bring your product team in, who maybe knows about some of the business goals more than someone else does, how are you going to know that there isn't something you've forgotten? Or, this happened recently where we were like, oh, we need to add a social button in that was really important to our photo department. And they were like, at the end, oh, we're not going to do this project if we can't do that. So, that was missed early on, but, we learned our lesson, and we're going to be able to fix things like that in the future.
Okay, so we've got 4 minutes-ish left, so I want to touch on a little bit around ethics and the theme of ethics within UX, which I know is something that many people have been interested in discussing. And there are lots of panels, we'll be on one tomorrow, talking about these sorts of subjects. Do you think there is a role for ethics and the ethical use of UX within companies to think about the ethics, whether they're important, whether it's their responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we owe it to our users to provide the best possible experience. I hope that we can pivot away from some of the business goals so that we can provide really valuable experiences for users no matter what product you build. Because I think no matter what happens, at the end of the day, if you build a great product that people love, you will find a way to make money from it. So I would just encourage people to move away from those sort of that line of thinking and think about building awesome stuff for people.
So if you were one of the people who had your hand up for someone who's working in UX and you want to be able to create fantastic user experiences from an ethical place, I think there's a lot of scope for arguing to your seniors that it's going to make a better long-term outcome if you take ethical principles into consideration. Are there any closing things that you think are important for people in the UX community to think about as they go out into the rest of the Web Summit?
Yeah, I mean, I just encourage you guys to really dive into design sprints. I encourage you to start looking at some of these amazing tools that are out there that are being built for the UX and design community. We've been using Sketch, and we've been using Zeppelin and InVision and the Craft, their new plugin, which is fantastic. All these prototyping tools. We've seen Flinto, Principle. Gosh, there's so many out there. And I encourage you to all start learning them, using them in your day-to-day, and I think we can all create better products together.
Great. And if people want to tweet you or find out more, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yes, so you can reach me at Adam Perlis on Twitter. Please feel free to ask me any questions or come up to me after this, and happy to talk to everybody and chat more about UX.
Great. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your time and attention. Have a great day.
Thank you.